When I was a kid, we were a baseball field family. Loved baseball, but my dad was one of those dads that would be at the ballpark, whether we had games or not. He would serve on the board for the league, all these kind of things. He was one of the dads at the beginning of the year that would make a point to go to the field and make sure that everything was good. So cut the grass, rake the dirt, all the things. I remember at one of these times at the beginning of the season, myself and a few friends went with our dads who were all working on the field. We were riding our bikes around the ballpark, and we came upon one of the most amazing sights that a young man, a kid, can find in South Louisiana, a brand new rock pile. They were going to be putting some new rocks in the parking lot, but it wasn't done yet, and it was just a big pile. So the first thing we did was we climbed it, we started playing, started digging, started throwing rocks at each other, at other things, just having a good time. One of my buddies looks at me and said we were throwing rocks at a truck, trying to get the rocks to land in the back of the truck. One of my buddies said, "I bet you can't hit the door of the truck." I bet you, as a young kid, is just a scary phrase to hear because the thing to follow is always a bad idea. I threw the rock, it flies, it's online, and all of a sudden, crash. Passenger side window shatters. When I turned around, my two friends that were there disappeared in an amazing way. And I felt alone. I had messed up, I had done something wrong, and all of a sudden, the first words out of my mouth were, my dad's gonna kill me. I took off, rode my bike, and went hide until it was time to leave. As we were on our way home, the guilt was just eating me up, eating me up, eating me up, until I finally looked at my dad and said, "Dad, I have to tell you something. I threw a rock and I broke a window." We get home. He says, "Go to your room. I'll handle you later." And then he comes in about an hour later. I was afraid. I had been crying. I was waiting for the spanking. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, we did everything. We boarded it up. Everything's okay. Just know that if there's anything you're ever in trouble, you can always come to me." I say this because in today's gospel, Jesus uses the image of a good father as the image for us to be able to relate to God. We have two sons in today's gospel. The younger son comes to his father and says, "I want my inheritance." When do you get an inheritance? When someone dies. So in a way, this younger son is implicitly saying to his father, "You're dead to me. Give me what is mine, and our relationship is done. It's settled." The younger son goes off, wastes his money, wastes his life, and finds himself famined, starving, and serving pigs. He's tending to swine. Pigs are taboo, so he's fallen from the highest of the highs to the lowest of the lows. As he's in this desperate space, he comes to his moment of sobriety and says, "I could go to my father, and maybe he'll let me be a servant in his household." And you can hear in the scripture today that he almost is practicing his lines like a little kid that's guilty, saying, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. Allow me to be a slave in your house. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. Allow me just to be a slave. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. Just let me come back." As he approaches the scripture, the way that the scripture reads today, we hear that while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and ran to him. Now, the beautiful image of the father running across a field, coming to embrace his son and bringing him back and restoring him to dignity is one that is wonderful and beautiful and has been reflected on over and over. But my favorite phrase has always been, "while he was still a long way off." Because if he's a long way off, what I've learned as a young person, as what I've learned in my past, if you're a hunter, you know this. If something's a long way off, you don't see it if you're not looking for it. Which tells me that the father, from the moment his son left, was waiting for him to come back. Sitting outside on his front porch, glass of sweet tea, I'm sure, and sitting there waiting, staring at the horizon, trusting that his son would come back. And when he sees him, he sprints to him. It's the same way that God relates to each of us. When we sin, when we fall, whether we feel alone or whether we feel like we're about to get punished, whether we want to hide or run, what happens is God waits. God does not come after us like a judge or a boss, looking to condemn or looking to be angry or looking to throw us out. But he comes in as a father, merciful and concerned. Very simply, in our own life, sin is poison. And God, when he sees a sin, is only moved to compassion, concern, and mercy. As we continue in this Lenten season, if it's been a while since the last time you've gone to confession, and if maybe fear or maybe anxiety or maybe worry or maybe self-doubt is holding you back from going to the Lord, put that aside, because God approaches us as a good and loving Father, waiting, looking, and just expecting us to come back home.